Hello and welcome to The Gist. I'm your host, Chris Vetrano, here to break down all the things happening in pop culture and interviewing the people that make it pop. Today's guest is a singer, an actress, and a DJ. You've seen her starring in hit shows like Dexter, CSI, and alongside Hilary Duff in the major motion picture Raise Your Voice. You might even recognize her voice from Trolls, but as a singer, she's toured with Destiny's Child, Katy Perry, and Britney Spears, truly having done it all. I'm so excited to be chatting with her today because she has had an incredible impact on pop culture. So please welcome to The Gist, Lauren Mayhew. Hello.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me.
Of course, I'm so excited to be doing this because this is a full circle moment because I was probably one of the biggest PYT fans that has ever existed.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Yes, I even, this is embarrassing, but I tried to find it somewhere because I know it's somewhere in my like pop culture area here. But I have signed photos from you guys and handwritten letters because I wrote like your fan club or something
Oh my gosh,
and
that's
asked you guys to
awesome.
come to be my dates to homecoming one year in high school.
This is amazing. This is amazing that you remember that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was, I think that I like created like a fan website back when, I was like trying to create codes when I don't remember what the platform was, but it was a little easier to create websites back then. But yeah, I was a big PYT fan. So I want to give kind of like the listeners a little bit of the background because I know you started, doing acting and singing.
Right.
And then you got in this group PYT, which is where, you truly have done so many things with that group. Britney Spears, NSYNC, Katy Perry, Destiny's Child, the Super Bowl. There was like so many things that you guys were doing.
Yeah.
How did that kind of all come to be from your perspective?
So I grew up with them in Tampa, Florida. We knew each other from a singing group that was like an all-girls group, kind of like a Mickey Mouse Club, but imagine if it was only girls. And instead of it being televised, it was live performances like all over the state of Florida, basically. So I'd known these girls. They were my best friends for years. And we had found this contest in a magazine. I think it was like Tiger Beat or I don't even know, one of those like teeny bot magazines. And it said something along the lines of like, become a pop diva. And we're like, oh, that sounds fun. We want to be pop divas. And so at the time we told the director of the group, like, hey, can you help us record a song and submit it, all this other stuff. And she was like, yes, of course. And then before we had a chance to submit it, she was in touch because of a TV show that at the time she was pitching with some A&Rs at Epic Sony. And they said that they were specifically looking for some girls that, could sing, etc. And they were interested in these other girls who were older than us. They were probably like 5 years older than us. They were probably like, 16, 17 at the time. We were only 12.
I know. It's crazy.
And so the girls that they were talking about, the band never really got legs. It just kind of died before it started. But the director of the group was like, well, that's not really a thing. But what about these younger girls? They're only 12, but they're super talented. And I think you should meet with them. So I think it was like within a week, they had planned to come down and meet with us, the two heads of A&R of Epic. And we auditioned for them at the Peabody Hotel in Orlando. We sang for them live. We put together like a dance and song and did all this different stuff, sang a cappella, each of us by ourselves. And the next day they called and signed us. It was the fastest thing. Wow. So like from finding the article in the magazine to being signed was less than a month. It's crazy.
Wow. That's like, that's kind of stuff like just, it's truly that overnight thing that people talk about. And the four of you did all know each other. There was no one that like joined later. Okay.
No. Yeah.
That's amazing. It really did kind of take off. And I remember I think where I first was introduced is it was back in the days of like the singles. And I used to just go to like the record store every, weekend or whatever and spend my allowance on like singles of like who was going to be the next thing. I loved music.
You must have had you must have had Something More Beautiful. Probably.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Something More Beautiful. A great jam. Still love it today. And yeah, I had it and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is great. I love these girls. And then, and Britney Spears was, my homie. She's my queen, even today. And you guys were opening for her
Mm.
at the Paramount Theater in Denver, where I first saw Britney on her first tour. And it was like, okay, like they are going to be the next
Here we
big
go.
thing. And then like, it was the days of Napster, and I don't know how I hope that it didn't impact you guys, but I like had found some of your other music through Napster, like
Mm.
I think like DFW
Oh
and
yeah.
like some of the other
Down
like
for
songs,
whatever.
Down for Whatever. And but then like the album was never coming, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden you guys like totally changed your sound, and same old and came
Yeah.
out. And so
I think that was maybe part of like the problem and like why things kept getting held. Like it was really interesting. You're 100% right. We went from being incredibly, incredibly pop to much more urban R&B,
yeah,
crossover. I think people were like really confused for a while. And then also too at a time where music videos were kind of making or breaking bands. We had, we
right,
had this song that was a remix of our single Same Old, and it was doing really, really well. It was like in the top 10 Billboard charted hits on radio. We were performing at all these different radio events, touring all over, and we had no music video.
mm,
And that was a time where TRL and MTV, it was so crucial to have, these images or a video to go along with your music. And we didn't have that. And then about like 8 or 9 or almost a year later, 8 or 9 months later, they spent a exorbitant amount of money on shooting a music video. But then at that point, when it finally was done, the song wasn't like in the top 10 anymore. So
right. It
unfortunately, it
lived
just
its
goes to
life.
show you that like, even if you have proper help, even if you have a proper budget, even if you have, amazing music, at the end of the day, there's also a timing factor. And if you kind of miss that window, that also can be, something that, doesn't allow the music to hit the full success or height that it could have otherwise. So.
Yeah. And so whatever like happened to that lost album? Like, cause was there a full album done of songs that were
There
like
was
in
a
that
full
more
album.
pop?
No, no, not in the full pop. No, no, just
Okay.
we only had one album that was released. There was
Right.
some of the pop songs did make that album,
Okay.
but a lot of the singles or the ones that you're referring to, like Something More Beautiful and everything, that was never on anything else other than a single.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm devastated about that because I loved all of those. I loved some of those songs, and, and then I feel like people like, as I still rock PYT, in our kitchen on Saturday nights, when we're having a party and we're like
I love
blast from the
that.
past, like we do like, Spotify roulette where we all like put on a song, and then I like always am like going to like PYT. People
I
are
love
like,
it.
oh my gosh, like I don't know who PYT is. And I'm like, you actually do, because you've seen Miss Congeniality, you've seen Bring It On. Like you guys had some like major and Center Stage.
Yeah.
Like you guys have some of the like critical songs in those movies. And then when people hear them, they're like, oh my God, I
Oh
loved this
yeah.
song.
And see, that I think was another another issue is that, back to my point of like us not having a music video out at that time and whatever, a lot of people actually did know our music, but they didn't know it was us. Now, maybe for like a rock band or something like that, that's not maybe an issue, but for a pop
Hmm.
band, that something was lost in translation there,
Yeah.
because you should have definitely known that it was us, maybe not necessarily each of our individual names unless, you were, a fan or whatever, but that was definitely, and it's one of those things that, when you're a kid, I mean, I was 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 years old, I'm not looking at these things or asking these critical, important questions to the label. They're things now that looking back, I'm like, wow, there's so many things that had they been done differently would have changed, I think, our whole trajectory and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, like looking back, the fact that these people knew the name PYT and knew the songs, but didn't even know that it was us. There obviously was a disconnect there,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So,
Yeah. And then so PYT also, it was Prove Yourself True, right? Not Pretty Young Things.
so it's so funny because it went through so many different iterations. It actually was originally, it was Pretty Young Things. And then,
Okay. That's what I
then
thought.
they thought that there was going to be an issue copyright wise, even though we were signed to the same label as Michael
Mm.
Jackson. They thought that that might be an issue. So then they changed it to just PYT. And then they're like, well, that's weird. It's just an acronym and doesn't stand for anything. So then there, we started like contests of like, what should it be? And then they just decided that, but it ended up being Pretty Young Things for a while, but then they changed it to that. So, I mean, honestly, which was also another very confusing thing
Yeah.
that the label did, and they kept changing our name. So,
Yeah.
when we ended and like, kind of disbanded, I did continue on with Lydia, one of the members, for a while, and we did utilize, Prove Yourself True at that point and kind of ran with that and did a lot of performances and stuff together. But, yeah, I don't know, once again, like as a kid, you don't necessarily pay attention to all this legality or, what's going on like behind the scenes. You just kind of know what people tell you. But anyways, yeah, so it's pretty funny and interesting how looking back, all of these things are things now that I think about or focus about. But as a kid, you're just like, just here to make music, just here to go out on stage and perform.
Yeah. And because you and Lydia, did you also have a name like Turning Point or something?
Yeah. So we utilized that for a while as well, because we did that when we started writing our own music that wasn't part of like the PYT sort of franchise or brand. So there was certain things that we got hired as PYT, and we would go under that. But as we kind of started writing a lot of music together, that's when we, started something new together just to kind of differentiate the two.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, as I said, I like followed it. I was like, I wanted you guys so badly to just like break, because I did think, I mean, especially at that time, you guys were so relevant. You had the look, you danced, you sang, you all sounded great. It was like, and I think that when the original pop music came out, that's what was so hot. Right. And it fit in so well with the NSYNC and the Britneys and all of that. And then when urban music started becoming more like infiltrating pop music more, I feel like then you guys kind of changed your sound, and it sounded great with that too. And your voices lent itself to both of those things really well. So it was just like, it was devastating as a fan of like, okay, they're not together anymore. And then, trying to see what you and Lydia were doing. And, Tracy was like in, I think it was called like UC3 or, something. And it was like, I was like trying to follow like all of you guys, cause I was like, I am going to follow these girls. Like I'm going to stick with them.
I love that.
I knew that. And then you really got into the acting stuff, and you've been in so many things. What did you love first? Or because it sounds like the music stuff kind of fell in your lap a bit. Yeah. Was that sort of like, did you get forced into that, or was acting sort of always sort of the backseat?
So actually I originally started out in musical theater. So technically I kind of started acting and singing at the same time, because obviously musical theater incorporates both, practices or lessons or whatever. And, but then from there I started, acting on different TV shows on Nickelodeon and WB and things like that, because living in Florida, there was a lot of that shot in Orlando, which was not super far from where I grew up in Tampa. So I started doing that. And then I booked a soap opera that was shooting in New York, Guiding Light. So I was going back and forth for that. And then I actually left the soap opera to do PYT, which they held my role, my spot open me for so long. But it's so interesting how the game has changed. Like nowadays, a label would love for any of their musicians to be a series regular on a TV show, or vice versa, for a TV show to have a singer that's touring around and bringing other eyeballs. But at the time, Sony just really saw it as taking me away from 24/7 touring and recording and all these other things. So they really discouraged it. And I eventually just had to leave Guiding Light. They were, they couldn't hold the role open forever. And during that period of time, especially the first 2 years when we were touring pretty much straight and recording all the time and doing radio shows and all that stuff, I think I only got to do like 1 or 2 guest stars during that whole period, which is really kind of unfortunate. Now I feel like the whole game has kind of changed in that sense. So I wish that, the industry was more like it is today at that point. But I remember back in the day, like people always used to ask me too. They're like, okay, well, we don't understand. Like you sing, but you act. Like which one do you really do? I'm like, both. I'm like, I know this is crazy, but you can do more than one thing, And I also felt like to some degree, especially with the acting, I felt that like my agents actually wanted me to downplay it, because they thought that it made me seem like I was a less serious actor and less serious, taking my craft less seriously or something, which is just silly and crazy, especially because nowadays there actually are so many different things that incorporate music with the acting or so many different actors now that will leave and go do albums or come back and, kind of flip flop around. So, it's unfortunate that that's kind of how it was then, but I'm grateful that now it's, I guess the industry's kind of wised up and, there's so many people
Yeah.
that are great at doing both.
Yeah. And you mentioned like how young you were too doing all of these
Hmm.
things. Was that just something that as a child you always wanted to do? And so your parents just supported you and found these opportunities because you were so young and doing so many things
Yeah.
before most people, I mean, before you guys were even of age to drive a car. Like
Yeah,
it's
it's
crazy
true.
how much you did. Yeah.
So my
Where did
parents are
that sort of
incredible.
come from?
Yeah, my parents are incredibly supportive. My dad's an orthopedic surgeon, my mom's a nurse. Neither one of them, I would say it was not their choice for me to be in entertainment by any means, but I wasn't one of
Wow.
those kids who kind of just like randomly fell into it. I loved it since, the beginning. I'd be that kid, to get on an elevator and be like, "Hi, want to hear me sing?" And then I just bust out before you even, could give an answer. So I loved it ever since I was a child, and it was one of those things that my parents were and are incredibly, incredibly supportive. And they were like, "Okay, well, we just want you to do well in school. So as long as you get straight A's and do well, then we'll support you and help you with, we'll treat it like it's soccer practice or gymnastics or, my sister did club volleyball, which surprisingly is almost as rigorous of a schedule. I feel like, people don't even
Yeah.
realize like with all these club and, club sports, plus also like the sport that you're doing at your school, it is so much traveling and so many practices and so many stuff. So I feel like my
Yeah.
sister kind of went through a similar thing, but just with her, volleyball and everything. So yeah, my parents were incredibly supportive and, traveled with me before I could travel by myself and put auditions on tape for me and, all the things.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you know, I feel like especially at that time, and I think it still did. I recently had one of the previous members of Fifth Harmony on, and she was talking about like how young she was, and she was like, there were days where I'm like, are we allowed to work this much? Like, because there was like times where they were like shooting 2 music videos in a day, and they were just trying to
Wow.
like make all these things, and you hear about the machine, and also like definitely around that pop craze where
Hmm.
PYT was first coming out, I have to imagine that like you were probably worked really hard. And then when things didn't pan out, how did you kind of keep going? Because you are still very much very present in this entertainment industry. Like, how did you kind of keep that moving?
So for me, I feel that one, it didn't really feel like I mean, I truly like love what I do, and I was also there with like my three best friends. It didn't really feel like work. So yes, I guess we were constantly. Actually, it's interesting. They had us emancipated. So I was a legal
Oh,
adult at 13. So that's how they
oh my
got around
gosh.
that one.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so there were
Controversy.
no, child labor laws, applying there because I was technically,
Wow.
above 18 in the eyes of the law. But you know what? Honestly, we had really good people that were around us. We had at least two parents with us at all time that would tour with us, plus a tour manager, plus usually our makeup artist, our tutor, our, tour bus driver. I mean, there was way more adults than there were us. We were very much outnumbered.
Right.
And honestly, it's interesting. Like I remember, hearing one time or overhearing a parent like asking my mom, like, how could you let your daughter do this and, travel over the world and whatever? Aren't you worried about like how she's going to all this stuff out, how she's going to grow up and not being supervised and whatever? And it's so interesting because I was actually more supervised doing what I was doing than if I'd probably been at home, going to high school parties or different things like that.
Right.
I feel like, we were watched at all times. It was basically like, go perform, come back, study, sleep, get on the bus, get to the next place. Our tour manager would have us run around our hotel for our entire set, singing it through because it takes so much
Hmm.
like respiratory, like endurance, like to be able to sing and dance around like that. So we used to have to, run the entire length of our set while singing it full out. But
Wow.
yeah, I mean, so for me, it didn't even that like was fun, like they were all memories. We made everything into a game and we really enjoyed it. I would say, when it ended for me, it didn't feel like I don't think I had any expectations of what it would be or what it wouldn't. So for me, it was just another, you know, um, career opportunity that I was doing like anything else. So when it came to an
Hmm.
end, I was like, oh, great. Now I can go back to acting again and, pick up kind of where I left off because I had really missed that. And, then I
Right.
started writing music on my own. So to me, it just seemed like a pivot rather than like, oh, this didn't turn out to be, our band didn't become as famous as we'd hoped or whatever. I just saw it as like, okay, that was a really great experience. Now I'm going to use that as a launching pad for the kind of next move.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, that's incredibly mature. I mean, even though you were emancipated and 18 in the eyes of the law, that is not like that wasn't true. And I think that, that's just crazy because I would think about, I mean, I would never have made it in that kind of industry. And I don't have like the talent that you guys have, but even working in the industry and seeing how much goes into it, it's like I got out of the music industry. I spent a lot of years in management and brand development for artists here in
Awesome.
Nashville, and I had to get out of it because it was like devastating when like it was like, why is the industry not picking up on this artist that I believe
Yeah.
in and I know has way better than what you're hearing on the radio and is way better than what people are investing in. And it's like, for me it was hard, so I can't imagine how
Yeah.
you were able, and you just must have like such a you know thick spirit of like this energy that has got you going since childhood, I guess, that just has kept you like so positive.
It's interesting. I wouldn't say that getting rejected necessarily gets easier. It doesn't. I feel like, there will be moments or times where I am just so frustrated but also it's also hard too, because sometimes you see, what you're capable of, what you can do. And when you don't have the opportunities given to you that can be very frustrating. But at the end of the day, if even like 10%, like a fraction of the things that you're going out for or doing or whatever that you're getting, all really other people see is the success, right? But behind
Right.
closed doors, I mean, man, I get rejected not only daily, but probably multiple times a day. To be honest with you, and people like, see me and they'll be like, wow, it looks like you've been doing so well and crushing it and traveling all over and doing this and doing that, but behind the scenes, I'm like, man, why didn't I, kills me that I didn't get this role, or like, oh, why didn't they hire me? So you always have, I
Mhm.
mean, no one's immune to that, no matter how well you learn to compartmentalize or to get past things or whatever it is that like, keeps you going. Like you can't, I don't think that, I feel like you'd probably lose like your humanity or what makes you an artist and what makes you feel so much, if you were able to build up such strong defenses that none of that stuff bothered you. I think that
Yeah.
if anything, I feel like I feel those each rejection sometimes harder than maybe most people would, because I take it to such heart, because it's not
Mhm.
just, music to me. It's like a part of me, or it's not just this role. So it's really interesting looking at it like that. But, I think that each day you just have to try to let those things go and focus on the next thing in front of you. Because what I have learned is, okay, I can stress about these things that I have no control over, and that's just going to put me more into a tizzy, or I can focus on something that I can control and move forward with that, positivity
Yeah.
and try to achieve that.
Yeah. And I wonder, and hearing you talk about it, I also wonder if like, because you did so many things in the beginning with like the acting and singing and musical theater, and there were so many things that you had already done and knew that you could do, if
Hmm.
that also sort of contributed, because when you're doing a lot of things, you get a lot more rejection before
For
something
sure.
actually happens. And the other girls for the most part like are not doing,
Right.
they're not in entertainment anymore, and they aren't in the public eye, and you still very much are. And I wonder if that's why, because you had more of these opportunities, and so you were a little bit more potentially like prone to the rejection.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think that, the other girls, um, I was also interested in, I think, additional things other than, just music or just the band. I
Right.
loved acting and songwriting and, these other things. So I think that that also, and because I already had a past in it and I had a resume in it and all of these other things, it was maybe easier to go back to than maybe if they'd wanted to do it and starting from scratch.
Yeah.
But, it's interesting because even with the acting, like it's so weird. It's like I had done all of these things before, but it almost was like it didn't matter because people were like, well, what have you been doing? And I remember like when I went to college, I'm like, well, I just went to school, I'm like, nothing happened,
Yeah.
and it's so
Yeah.
crazy that like people, they always want to find, kind of follow, they're like heat seeking missiles, where they just want to follow what's
Mhm.
like already hot and moving and shaking and crushing it. And it's like, well, I'm still that person. Like I just, went to school and was like a kid for a second, but like I'm back. And I remember that being
Yeah.
really difficult because I had done too many things to be like a new undiscovered talent. I had, done too many like big projects and TV shows and films and all this stuff. But yet I wasn't, like a name celebrity. So I fell in this weird kind of middle gray area. And I remember struggling with that, like in LA for a while and trying to find, and honestly, I think moving to New York was maybe one of the best things that I did because
Mm.
being kind of like the new kid on the block, but still having the resume that I had allowed me to get a lot more opportunities than maybe, if I hadn't. And,
Yeah.
I booked a bunch of guest stars right away. I booked Trolls Topia and got to do 7 seasons as a series regular, for DreamWorks, which was like an absolute, amazing experience. The DJing career took off, I was still licensing music. And I think now, I mean, man, I think I've almost licensed about 300 songs now to film and TV and commercials. So
It's amazing.
for a period of time,
And
that was actually my main bread and butter. But now I've focused more on the performing aspect, I'd say.
yeah. Yeah. And and for folks that maybe aren't familiar, you DJ, but you also sing because you have that, which is like a little different. Obviously, Paris Hilton isn't singing. Well, all right, that may be a bad example, but there's a lot of there's a lot of DJs out there that they can't sing, and
Right.
that's not something that they have. So you're actually able to like bring a sort of full show together when you're doing that. And tell me a little bit about how that's come together and how that feels, um,
Yeah,
aligning with all of these things that you have loved to do.
for sure. Yeah. So, um, I had started writing music for DJs and singing on, some of their songs. And then I started touring with some of them and performing with some of them, being kind of like a special guest performer during their sets, which was
Hmm.
great. But I kind of got to the point where I felt like as a singer, where I was always reliant on either a guitarist or a band or a DJ. I couldn't really just pick up and do these shows or take these opportunities on my own. I always was reliant on, others. And if you know anything or, get to know a little bit about my personality, that was not sitting well with me. I wanted to take, my future into my own hands and have more control. So I was like, I got to learn how to do this DJing thing. I was like, I think I can do this. And honestly, I wish I had done it years before I even did it. I am so grateful because it's just been such an amazing outlet to not only get my original music out there, but also to be able to perform on such a much more consistent basis and on my own terms and travel all over the world and all of these things. And it's really a cool opportunity. And like you said, having the singing, I think it's really neat when, people are, first of all, they see me up there and DJing and they're like, oh, it's a girl, like that's cool, which now there's a lot more females. But when I first started, it was very rare, I feel like, that there were any girl DJs. And
Yeah.
then when I all of a sudden start singing and bust out in the middle of my set, people are like, whoa, like they don't expect it, which is such a cool thing to watch and to see them recognize that, wow, like she's actually singing that live. That's not a recording. And I think it's also allowed me to, grow quickly because I've been able to collaborate with other DJs in a way that maybe other DJs who don't sing can't. As a
Yeah.
writer, as a vocalist, as a top line, creator. And so, I just got back from Amsterdam. I had a bunch of shows there. I was there for Amsterdam Dance Event. And oh my goodness, I met so many people in those 3 days, but so many amazing DJs and producers that I can work with now, as a songwriter and also as a singer, and that I could potentially perform with in the future, et cetera. So I'm really excited about, hopefully there'll be a lot of new music and collaborations coming up on the horizon for me.
That's amazing. Yeah. And when you're doing like a DJ set, are you building it mostly just like at home? And is this just like how you, like, what is your process for that? Cause I'm so interested. And I know that there's a lot of DJs that bear the DJ name, but you're actually creating something, which is not what a lot of like the DJs are doing.
So I don't do anything prior to. I'm not unless it's like a specific edit or a certain remix. But everything that I am doing is live and in the moment. I
Okay.
will prepare, meaning like depending on what the set is, or depending on what the room is like, or if I'm playing peak hour and I'm headlining, or that might be a different set than if I'm doing a pool party or rooftop sunset session. Like it's probably going to
Yeah.
be a different vibe of music and a different style, a different energy level, all of those sorts of things. So I have kind of my overall general uh, genre and vibe and feel that I bring to any set. But within that, I can kind of push that direction in one way or another, depending on, the venue, the crowd response, and, what's just the overall energy of what they want for a set. So I kind of pay attention to those things, and I try to, especially if it's a place that I've never played before, I try to do a little research and find out, okay, who else have they had? I try to watch videos and be like, okay, this is the sort of, thing that these people are, because it becomes even more difficult when you go to, a different country or a different city or a state, because they can have a completely different sort of musical style. And maybe I would be like, oh, okay, wow, this sort of stuff that I do really works, or these sorts of remixes that I do really work more with this crowd than they have maybe with the
Yeah.
past crowds that I played. So that's the sort of, pre-planning that I do for any sort of set.
Yeah. Um, no, that's very interesting. So if you, because I know like DJing also, as you just said, can take you all over the world, and you could be traveling, all the time. So that would be tough for, if you landed like a series regular on some show, like how would you make a decision at that point to do one or the other? Or are you kind of like always in it to win it for both?
So honestly, luckily, they haven't really conflicted that much. So DJing, not always, but by and large, is on the weekends and at night. And most of the
Sure.
acting stuff is during the day and on weekdays. So I honestly have always pretty much, I mean, knock on wood, I've been more or less always able to kind of work out the schedules. So I haven't really had to choose. It's been something where,
Mhm.
maybe I could let production know, like, hey, I need to leave by this time on Friday to fly out or whatever, and it's usually not a problem. I
Mhm.
mean, maybe once in a while, if there was an issue, then maybe I would just have to not, schedule a show for that specific weekend or something like that. But I really haven't had many times where there's been overlap, to be honest, which is really fortunate and great.
Yeah. No, that is good. And do you like one over the other, or are you just still the 12-year-old girl that just loves doing it all?
I'd say that they bring me different things, and they bring me joy and satisfaction in different ways. I'd say that the music is, an instant gratification when you're performing in front of a live audience. That energy that you feed off them, they feed off you. There's nothing like that. I mean, I
Hmm.
feel so at home on a stage, and I love that. I just love that feeling. But there's also something to be said about, with acting, you're just one piece of like this massively large production. There's lighting, there's the director, there's the other actors, the editors, there's staging, there's props, there's wardrobe, and it's really cool to bring your craft to that and then see all of those pieces come together and to see a final product from it. And like I think that's really amazing. I'm always like, I'm the type of actor that when I'm on set, I'm not like just stuffed away in my dressing room speaking to no one. I like love to walk
Yeah.
around and like see what everyone else is doing and become friends. And I feel like the more that you can kind of, and this is really honestly true in any field, but the more you can kind of learn about these other sort of roles that people do, the better I think that you can do your job. Like when I'm
Hmm.
aware of, what the camera's doing and how tight it is. Like, is it a close up? Is it a wide? Is it a medium shot? Like, all of these things that you get better with blocking. You get better with cheating the camera. You get better with just kind of being aware, I guess, of these things. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I love to be able to just, immerse myself in all these different roles and all of the amazing things that, these talented people do. So,
Yeah. No, I mean that's I mean, and it's amazing that you still, like I said, I am very impressed by you because of how long you've been doing this and been in the industry and juggling all of these things and continuing to sort of reinvent. And I was wondering when you were just saying that too, I was like, I wonder if because you don't prepare anything and you're not just a DJ that hits play on their their pre-planned set,
mhm.
is there a bit of like every night, like, and even different when you were, touring with like PYT or in the music, like you were doing the same set every night and it was the same dance moves and the same songs and these same
Mhm.
orders. Like, is there something that like is, I almost want to say, like, is it sad in some way that like
Mm.
when it's over, because it's like that was a once in a lifetime
Hmm.
set that you just did.
That's really interesting to hear. I don't think I've ever heard someone quite put it that way. That's so interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely certain shows that even if I played a similar set, sometimes it's not even necessarily the music being drastically different. Sometimes it's just the energy from the crowd. And you can, like, there are
Hmm.
certain crowds that, like, once I know, like, I have them, I can almost take them in any direction. I could, like, change it up and do something super crazy and unexpected. And, like, I know that they'll follow me there, and, like, that's such a cool
Yeah.
feeling because, and that is, I don't know how you, like, that's that magical thing. I mean, that exists in, for athletes, for actors, for musicians, like you can
Yeah.
just feel it when you're in it. And you know, I don't really know how to necessarily, yeah, you can't ever really recreate. I mean, you try to recreate those moments, but it's always a little bit different, right? So, but yeah,
Yeah.
definitely those shows. I mean, I just get off the stage and I'm just like, wow, those are the ones that just fly by. I'm like, man, it's already been
Magic.
2 hours. Like, geez,
Yeah.
that just, felt like 15
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah, no, I mean, because I was thinking too, like, with acting, and you get like an incredible take. That was probably the take that they're going to use, and now it's going to live on forever. So you
Forever,
always
yeah.
can go back and watch it. You can always relive it. But on with like doing something different every night or every show is like once it's done, you've done it. And so it's like it is very different. I guess I could
Yeah.
understand how it really feeds different parts of your soul, and
Hmm.
and just keeps you inspired to keep doing what you're doing.
Definitely keeps it fresh for sure because it's always something
Yeah.
different or unique or so that I would say it definitely keeps it interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know we talked a lot about the girls. I'm curious, have you guys stayed in touch? I know it's hard. I don't talk to people that I talked to when I was 12. So I know that, like, I'm not looking for any drama. I'm not looking for any, but
No.
is do you guys, you were best friends at 12. You guys
Yeah.
did this incredible thing. I mean, touring with these people that are the biggest stars in the world.
Hmm.
Like, how do you guys keep in touch today, if at all?
So Lydia now lives in Vegas, and I get to perform out there a lot, which I love. And she's actually come to numerous of my shows, and so we're
Amazing.
so close. And she's amazing. She's super supportive, and in so many ways, she is this crazy, mature, just grown adult version of herself. But in other ways, she's still that same 12-year-old girl. And I like love that. She still has her same like silliness and playfulness and kindness. And so I love spending time with her. And she's fantastic. Ashley is still singing. She lives in Denver. And
Denver,
she
yeah.
actually sings with one of those big kind of like 12 or 15 person like corporate bands that like play, at like big events or massive expensive
Yeah.
weddings and stuff like that. And her voice is just as gorgeous as ever. And she
Yeah.
also is releasing some of her own music, and she has her own band and plays at festivals and stuff like that there. And they're called French Cuffs, I believe is what they're called. But yeah, so
Okay.
she's doing great. Actually, the last time I was in Denver, I stayed at her place with my
Oh,
boyfriend, and it was
wow.
just so great. Like, same thing too. When I came over there, she had like, we came over and it was almost like, coming into Betty Crocker's house. She had like baked all these things and she had like, it was in the backyard was like just this beautiful, she's always been very like earthy and like organic. So it just had all of these like pretty flowers, and she'd had this like, picnic table like thing set up. It was really, really cute. So I love her very dearly as well. Tracy is the one that I don't get to speak to as much. She's
Yeah.
the only one out of us who's a mom. She has a daughter, and her
Hmm.
daughter is so cute and quite the little ham, just like Tracy was. And her daughter actually goes to the same school that I went to from first to 12th grade here in Tampa.
Oh, wow.
So I would love to see Tracy and her daughter much more often, but I also keep in touch with them, via social media and kind of keep tabs on them
Yeah.
that way. But yeah, mom life. I guess it's it's a busy life.
Yes. Yeah, she looks, I keep up with all of you on socials as well. but it looks like she's kind of like, doing the country club tennis things,
Yes, she
kids are at
is.
school. She's living
She
like
makes that life
she's living,
look good.
yes, she's living her housewife life. If there was a
Hmm.
Housewives of Tampa, I think that
She would
she'd
be in
be
it for sure. She
right
she would
for
have
it.
to be cast. She'd be amazing. She'd be amazing.
Well, I love that you do. It does sound like you guys have stayed in touch, which is amazing, even if not all the time. But that's so great. Like I said, I've gushed a lot today because I was such a big PYT fan, and when I first started this podcast, I wanted to get back into the entertainment world, but I knew, as I said, being in management, being on that side of the fence, I was like, it was soul crushing because I loved being a music fan instead of
Hmm.
being the man behind it.
Hmm.
And
Because you probably felt
I
any sort of like bump in the road probably as hard as the artist did. Because that's the thing is like having a good manager. It's kind of like like a marriage with them, because you
oh
go
yeah.
through it all together. All of the all of the highs and all of the lows. So I can imagine that you probably felt it just as strongly as they did.
Yeah, and sometimes I think even more so because there were things you didn't want to share with the
Right.
artist, right? Like you don't want to share that, like, oh, I'm working really hard on this deal or this thing, and then in the last minute, like they're
Doesn't
not
go through.
interested in you for these reasons, and it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, that thing, I guess I'll let that slide because you got a show tonight, and I don't want to like break your spirit.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like you carry all this weight, and being such a music fan as a child, and really truly, like I was like, I'm going to be the next Clive Davis, and I'm going to discover talent. And that's why I went and bought singles
I
every
love that.
weekend and wanted to discover who was going to be the next thing. It's why I became so devoted to PYT, and felt so devastated when the label didn't move you guys forward, because I felt like I was invested
Yeah.
in the career from that standpoint. And so when I did this, I remember very early on, my husband, he asked me, he was like, you know, who are like the people that you want to have on? And I was like, oh, I want to, like, I had a Lisa Donovan who was in Clueless. And I was like naming like some of my favorite things of all time, my favorite movie, my favorite TV show. And I was like, what would be amazing if I could get PYT to reunite on an episode and like have all four of them together. And
I'm
then I
I'm
was
here
like,
for it.
well,
I'm here for it. I'm not against it.
well,
I
maybe
even
we'll do it.
when everyone started doing all these reunion tours, like when it was oh my goodness, O Town and all of this,
Yeah.
whatever, like I had reached out to the girls at one point and was like, do you like let's like, do like some shows and like bring it back. And it was hard being kind of like the ringleader of all of it. And I wanted to bring all of us together, but then, I'd get some, and then timing and then, and so it
Yeah.
just unfortunately didn't work out. And also I was kind of focusing on, a different people kind of in my ear. Like at the time, the management that I was with was like, you know what, these things that you did in the past were phenomenal and they've made you the artist that you are today, but you kind of need to focus on like what moving forward if because like you
Hmm.
still have this career that you're wanting to do and you're DJing now and you have this totally different sound. It could be confusing / put a hold on the momentum that we've created in this realm if you go back and take a
Right.
bunch of time to go and do this. But for me, I was just like, but it would be so fun. Like I would just
Yeah.
really, and I'm kind of sad
Yeah.
that, I mean, not that it still, couldn't happen, but I really wanted to do it. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But who knows what the
Well,
future holds.
Well, yes. I mean, like I said, I would love to host a platform for you guys to all come and chat about those days, and because I do think that there is something like really nostalgic. And honestly, I was like, I want to make sure that I talk about Lauren's like DJing and everything she's doing now because you have had such a long career. But I was like, but I also want to remind people who are listening, the people that listen to this podcast are very much me, and they're the same
Hmm.
type of consumer that I was in music and entertainment. And I want to remind people of like, this is where you came from, because
Right.
actually, you know one thing we didn't talk about is you were the girls in the Mandy Moore Candy video. Like,
Yep.
you were like, you guys had this presence and you guys did all of these things that like there's so few people that can say that they toured with Britney on her very first tour. It was you guys and Michael Frito.
Yeah. Michael
And
Frito. I
do you
remember him.
remember?
Yeah, of course, of
Yes.
course. And also, who else was around at that time? It may have been a different tour, but Stacey Arico he toured
Oh
with,
yeah.
and also, Man, what was
Was
the
that on NSYNC
S Club
though?
7 as well?
Oh yeah, yeah,
And then who else? That's the thing is I may be getting confused as to which openers were on which tour. But I'm just
yeah,
like remembering the other openers that we had with us occasionally. So
yeah. Well, or
Wild
was
Orchid.
Destiny's Child? Oh yeah, Wild Orchid. When you
Hmm.
were talking about the other group, I thought maybe it was either Wild Orchid or non or Innocence. Was
Oh
that
yeah, I
the other
remember
one?
Innocence. No,
There
we
was
never toured with Innocence. We never toured with Innocence.
okay.
I don't think.
Was the Destiny's Child, was that with NSYNC?
No, Destiny's Child was separate. It was their own tour. And it was very interesting. The Destiny's Child tour. So with Britney and NSYNC, we went to all of the big cities, all of the massive arenas. But with Destiny's Child, what they did was they went to all the cities that never get big acts. So we went to
Mm,
the most like Champaign, Illinois, or like random places in Missouri or whatever. Where sometimes like the
right.
biggest venue that they would have in their city would be like where they sold cattle or something, and they'd like clear the
Oh,
whole thing out and make a stadium out of it and bring in the staging and all
wow.
this other stuff. So there was it definitely wasn't quite as big of audiences. Like I feel like with Britney and NSYNC, we were performing for like 30, 40, 50,000 person audiences. With Destiny's Child on that tour, I want to say it was anywhere between maybe as small as like 8,000 to as big as maybe like 15 or 20,000. But it was really
Mm,
cool because I feel like every single person in that town and surrounding came out because it was the only, like
thing to
big
do.
act
Yeah.
they've had. Yeah. And so that was really cool and an interesting experience. I feel like also as a performer, those type of fans are kind of some of the best fans because they're so excited and they're so amped up
Hmm.
that the energy at those shows, even though they were less people, felt like it was just as big of a stadium as some of the other ones because they were just so amped up to be there. So that was very cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I again, back in the day when I was in the industry, I mean, that is kind of the strategy, right? Is like when you know that you have an audience built in because
Hmm.
you're the ticket in town that night,
Hmm.
and so you know that those people are going to come, then it's up to the artist to actually like convert them to be a fan.
For
But there are
sure.
so many of those towns that you can really go and build a career just by
Hmm.
doing those. And so, and that's it, I think makes a lot of sense that that's kind of where Destiny's Child was starting, and
Yeah.
they had like they had kind of a similar. They started really slow, and then they had their like one song, "No No No,"
Hmm.
and then I always thought it was interesting when you guys went more urban. That you went on tour with Destiny's Child, and
Yeah.
then you had a song called "Yeah Yeah Yeah," and I was like, "Oh, are they like trying really hard to like make them like
I think that was
the new Destiny's
unrelated.
Child?"
I actually think that if anything, I think our A&Rs really wanted us to be like In Vogue or TLC. Those were like the
Yeah,
artists that
well,
they always referenced for us to kind of that they wanted us to kind of be like. I mean, not that like Destiny's Child isn't also another amazing reference, but I don't think that
yeah,
that was like maybe that wasn't what they were always like saying or coining to us.
yeah.
But I think that because that was unreal. Like, basically it was a different writer who wrote that and just came. So I think that was all just like a coincidence. But like when you
Yeah.
say that, I'm like, oh yeah, I never even thought about that. But yeah, I think that was just a coincidence.
No, I spent way too much time thinking about these things when you were in
I don't.
PYT.
I don't
So
think there was like. I don't think there was like a conspiracy behind that one. That like they like. I think
yeah,
that was just random luck.
yes, no, absolutely. But no, but like I said, it's been such a pleasure. Tell us what you're doing next because I know you just got back from Amsterdam. But what's next for you? Where can we find you next?
Yeah, so actually I'm right after this podcast interview, I'm off to a show. I'm performing as a celebrity DJ for Heineken. They're doing a series of pop-ups all over Florida. And so I'm doing one tonight with them. I'm really excited about it. It's combining art and music. So actually the poster and everything for it is like a drawn caricature version of me, which is super cool. So they're printing a bunch of them out like super large size. And I was like, I want to keep one because the artist is phenomenal. She did such a good job creating it. And actually so random. The artist is PYT, like, PYT Ashley Niven, her best
Yeah.
friend from childhood, which is so
Oh
random
wow.
and weird. Yeah. Like, so Ashley messaged me. She's like, the artist who made your poster is like one of my best friends. I was like, what? So
Oh
yeah, it
my
just
god.
shows you how small the world is. But yeah, so I'm always working on new music. So definitely check me out, Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Music, Deezer. wherever, YouTube Music, wherever you get your music, all of my music is on there under Lauren Mayhew. SoundCloud, and YouTube, I post a lot of live mixes. So if you ever want to hear, hour-long live DJ sets, I have a bunch of different, from, chill driving in your car sort of music to amped up, getting ready to go out on a Friday night music. So, and I answer everything as much as I can. So if you have questions or want to hear other stuff, definitely feel free to DM me on Instagram. I'm pretty much on everything Lolo Mayhew. I kind of adopted Lolo as like a nickname, and it kind of has stuck. So I've been using that as my DJ name. So, but you can find me on anything under that.
Amazing. And any acting gigs coming up, or are you still just auditioning and working?
So right now, auditioning for new things. I have been doing all of the. It's been a pretty cool thing, but I've been doing all the radio and commercial spots for Busch Gardens, SeaWorld, and Aquatica, which has been pretty neat. Oh, wow. And so I've been doing that since actually like this whole year. So that's been fun. But yeah, finally, I was so glad that the SAG-AFTRA strike is finally over. But I'm auditioning for cool guest stars, movies, different like recurrings and stuff like that. So hopefully I'll have news on that to share with you soon.
Awesome. And are you still I know you mentioned that right now you're in Florida, but are you still living in New York?
So I'm in New York about 1 week out of every month because I have so many shows there. I perform at Marquee a lot, at Summer Club, a lot of big nightclubs there. But I bought a house in Florida, which is where I'm originally from. My family lives here. My sister moved back. She's also a doctor now and works here. So it's a great jumping off point. And Florida's grown so astronomically because of the pandemic. And if you would have told me I'd be back here living, I would have told you you're out of your mind if this had been, from 2018 or something. But now it's changed so much, and I really enjoy being here, being on a boat every weekend. And I've actually taken over some kind of different responsibilities of one. I've become the musical director for a big hospitality brand out here in Florida. So I curate all their Spotify playlists for their restaurants and their hotels and book their talent and things like that, which is a great fun thing. Like just kind of also a different way to use my musical skills and things like that from anywhere in the world. So that's been neat. And then I've also been producing my own events. So this whole summer I did a bunch of shows at a really awesome high-end boutique hotel called Hotel Alba. And I produced these shows called Summer Soul. And they were like little mini festivals. So I had a bunch of sponsors. So you'd like walk through the booths and you get like free samples, or, you could shop or different things. And then there'd be live music and entertainment. And it was so much fun. So I love being able to kind of envision an overall concept or idea and being able to execute that and put that together. So that's something that I've really been able to, flex those ideas here in Florida with, my relationships and connections with different venues and brands and put them to use.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Yeah, you just truly are hustling. You are doing it all, and I love to see it. I'm so glad, like I said, that we made this happen. You're making the ask of escorting me to my homecoming kind of come true in a way, because we got to have a chat, and it's been super fun to just kind of like go down memory lane with the PYT days and hear about all the things you're doing. And I'm definitely on board if I need to get these girls all together so that we can have a group chat. I think I would love to do it. But I'm glad that you were the first. And yeah, I appreciate that you came on. And for all of you listening, like, make sure that you follow Lauren, because she is constantly doing something, and she will probably be in a city near you. And so then you should definitely check her out. So follow her and check out, and I'm going to say check out PYT too, because the more streams that they're getting, the more likely they'll do a reunion.
And actually, you brought something up that's a great point, is I post all of my shows on my Instagram page and also on my website. And if you do see that I am coming to a city near you, I usually get a pretty sizable guest list and everything. And I will hook you up if you message me and say you want to come with friends. So let me know. I'll put you on the list.
Amazing. Well, I will definitely be hitting you up next time that you're near me or anywhere I need to travel. So I will be looking and staying connected. But thank you so much. I hope that you're continued success just continues to give you the inspiration to do what you're doing. Because, like I said, I'm very impressed by all that you have been able to do, given how it started so young and the perseverance that you've had to just keep it going. I love it, and I've loved having you on the show today. So, thanks so much, Lauren. For all of you, don't forget, rate, subscribe, so that you never miss an episode of The Gist. And until next time, it's Chris and Lauren, and we're signing off.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.